So what's the first distraction you want to talk about?
Let me pull up the my tab here so I can share my screen. Let's just go to CNN and let's see what
Okay.
they've got. So they do have a story about the coronavirus, which I am going to be talking about later, but with a different angle. But right here, we've got 100 cases of coronavirus confirmed in the United States. Virus has killed 6 people in Washington State, according to health officials. More than 3,000 have died globally from the outbreak. And you can kind of see these little additional headlines for additional articles below. So you got a timeline here, how Trump was out of step with the CDC during coronavirus response. Yeah, there's no bias in that headline at all. I would say that's no bias there. Student with no contact and no related travel gets coronavirus. U.S. coronavirus cases surge and prompt travel restrictions, school closures, and emergency declarations. And we've got one here that's actually listed as opinion. That's nice that they actually listed as opinion. A coronavirus crisis underlies 8 of Trump's failings. Because remember, no crisis cannot be utilized politically. No crisis can go to waste.
Trump this isn't a distraction. This is a real story that affects real people. We've seen it affect Hong Kong. The streets are cleared. This has real geopolitical implications.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I just find these headlines interesting. Trump claims flu has higher death rate than coronavirus. CNN's Dr. Gupta corrects him. Great, yeah, that's real valuable there. Apple, and here we go. Apple will pay up to $500
million. Let's dig into that for a little while. You know, what's going on with that headline? Let's dig into that a little while. What's going on with that headline?
Which one?
Dr. Gupta corrects the president. You know, the president says that the flu has a higher death rate than the coronavirus. So that's an empirical question. The president can be right. The president can be wrong. But what's the real policy implication there? Why does that matter? They're trying to show up the president, right? Basically, they're both. The Spanish flu was immensely deadly. So if coronavirus is less deadly than the flu, well, it doesn't matter. It could still be a very important thing. This is completely, they're scoring points for the purpose of scoring points. They're not trying to inform anybody. They're trying to dunk on the president. And, you know, whether you love him or hate him, that's what most of the news is. It's cheap point scoring. And, you know, that doesn't inform you of anything. It doesn't tell you what matters here. How is the president actually responding? That would matter. Whether he knows the right statistics about coronavirus, that doesn't matter. He's not the one who is going to be leading the response. That's going to be doctors. That's going to be the CDC, to some degree the Surgeon General. But you know, the president's knowledge of trivia simply doesn't matter.
And I can say from watching some of the press conference, you know what Trump meant, and what Trump was really talking about with that particular quote was the fact that there have been more deaths from the flu than there has been from coronavirus.
Sure, and there's a difference between absolute numbers and the death rate. Did he say the right one? Probably not. He's a big picture guy.
So I think it, and I think they know what he meant. It's just that they need to call him out for it.
Sure.
But down here,
if that determines your vote, that says a lot about you. Yeah. What do you think about this Apple lawsuit? You're an Apple guy, aren't you?
I was at one point.
What happened?
Actually, part of this, I was constantly having issues with the batteries, which this is something that is actually an old story. I remember this years ago when they broke this story. Apparently now the lawsuit has gone through because Apple was putting software on their phones that was essentially making your battery die before its time. So Yeah, I would say that this is kind of old news. People obviously, are going to be trying to get a little piece of this 500 million, I assume. But
Mhm.
it's an old story as far as what Apple was doing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The new
hopefully
twist,
it's
I guess, is the settlement.
right, right. Um, so we do have, of course, some political news that's going pretty strong right now, which is that apparently a lot of these former Democratic candidates are starting to coalesce around Biden.
Hmm.
Uh, so it's down to three, right? So now we basically just got Biden, Warren, and Sanders after the South Carolina primary. Uh, I was actually I'll say that I wasn't surprised, but I will say that everybody kind of said that this was a make or break for Biden. And as far as the break part, he appears far from that. And it does seem like the quote unquote moderate wing, if you will, of the Democratic Party, if you can call it that, seems to be sort of galvanizing around him.
Hmm. Yeah, and you and I have talked about this. I don't know that extreme versus radical is really the division here. Um, how do you even measure if Buttigieg is a radical or Warren is a radical? Um, I've heard Buttigieg called one of the more centrist candidates, but as I understand it, as you know, in his career so far, he's taken positions that are to the left of Warren, not to her right. So this is largely about temperament. This is about the salesmanship part of it. I just think that a lot of this is completely misguided. It's all packaging. It's all lies. We don't know who any of these people are. We're being sold a bill of goods, as we usually are in the primary, because we don't have time to dig through 17 candidates and get to know who they really are. Now, I'll also say that clearing the field, I don't think that's a good idea. If you're a moderate or if you're worried about Sanders, there's a story just below that talking about the Stop Sanders movement, which is what this is about. Uh, I don't think having fewer candidates hurts Sanders. It just means that he gets to go one on one against Joe Biden, and it makes it more likely that he gets an absolute majority of the delegates, or somebody gets an absolute majority of the delegates when we get to the convention. Uh, so, yeah, dropping out and endorsing Biden, I think it seems like a good strategy, but it gets the Democrats further away from a brokered convention. And I can see this backfiring big time, big time for the Democrats, because we're going to find it's a lot of people who like Klobuchar or who like Buttigieg or any of the other candidates who've already dropped out. Their second choice is going to be Sanders. A lot of them, not all of them. Um, so Sanders is going to see a bump, as Biden will after this. It's not guaranteed that Sanders will suffer. So I think this is incredibly misguided. And for people out there, if you're a Republican and you think that Bernie Sanders can't win the presidency, I wake up. Bernie Sanders absolutely can win the presidency. It's not guaranteed, but if you are complacent, if you think that there's no way the American people could elect Sanders, well, look, Sanders right now sounds an awful lot like Trump in 2016. Not in terms of what they're saying or what they stand for, but everybody is saying he's too radical, he's too out there, nobody's going to vote for him, and he just keeps rolling. His numbers keep going up in the primaries, and he's just defying political gravity. Nobody predicted this, um, and there's a very simple reason why, because people are dissatisfied, not for reasons that are entirely obvious to me. I think the stock market is good, unemployment's low, the economy's going great. There's a lot of good things going on in the country right now, but people are open to, because they're dissatisfied, they're open to more radical candidates. People, I should say, outside the box candidates. In 2012 and 2008, nobody would have voted for Donald Trump. Nobody would have voted for Bernie Sanders. But today's political climate, absolutely, those guys are viable. They can win, and if they're both nominated, one of them is going to win. So buckle up, and don't be surprised if in November the American people elect President Bernie Sanders. So.
Well, I think one of the big questions with that, though, is will the Democratic Party allow a nomination like that to go forward? When you factor in the superdelegates and the general attitude of the Democratic Party, that's I think a very big question mark, at least in my mind, as far as even if he does get that majority. That's what the superdelegates are for. The superdelegates are there to ensure that they don't have something like that happen,
But they only vote on the second ballot. In previous elections, they voted on the first ballot. So if Bernie Sanders has a majority going into the convention, he's the nominee. So long as his delegates actually vote for him and there's not something crazy that happens, like they unbind all the delegates and there's a complete free-for-all on the floor and it goes to a brokered convention anyway. If Bernie Sanders gets a majority of the delegates and they don't break their own rules, and that's not a given. The Democrats have broken their own rules before. That's the real danger to Bernie Sanders if he goes one-on-one against Joe Biden. If he's one-on-one against Joe Biden, I think he gets that majority. I think he rolls into the convention with a very strong hand. And the only thing the Democratic establishment can do at that point is go nuclear, force a brokered convention. And they absolutely will do that. And then they have almost 800 super delegates in their pocket who would tip the balance for Biden.
Yeah, I could see that. I could see that. I guess it's a matter of we'll see in a lot of ways.
Sure.
I do think it's interesting what we're getting down to. I don't think you can discount Bloomberg. That's for sure. I think because of Bloomberg's money and just his ability to access the media the way that he does through ads, you can't totally factor him out. But we'll see. It's a lot of it is a wait and see game. Sure. Interestingly enough, I have a pretty good friend who actually was the president of one of the local chapters of the I think it was the Young Students for Liberty or something like that. I can't remember the exact name of the organization. But he was at one of the local junior colleges. He was the chapter president years ago. And he actually is supporting Biden, which is pretty interesting. We have some pretty interesting discussions, he and I, about his choice and why he's doing it and all that kind of stuff. So there are some interesting people. I mean, people you might not think that are supporting Biden, that you normally wouldn't associate with a Democratic candidate, and certainly not with Biden personally. But yeah, they're there. I mean, there are people that I would call him 100% Liberty. He's I wouldn't question his motives at all. But he's a Biden supporter. He's looking forward to the campaign here. He was worried that Biden might not make it to Arizona, and I would say that Biden has a pretty good chance of making it to Arizona.
Biden will make it to Arizona. Yeah, with all these other candidates dropping out, I mean, who's going to be the standard bearer if he drops out? I mean, Mike Bloomberg? There's nobody left, really. Elizabeth Warren is done. Klobuchar and Buttigieg were the only ones who were racking up delegates in any numbers at all. I don't know that Warren had any delegates. Maybe she has them from New Hampshire. I don't recall. But I don't think she had any delegates.
I think she actually got a couple from Nevada.
From Nevada. I didn't follow that back. Yeah.
So
speaking of Nevada, I wanted to bring this up. If we're talking about how Bernie Sanders can be screwed by the establishment, a lot of the numbers that you see that are being reported, this candidate has that many delegates, that candidate has that many delegates. It can change at a state convention. And Nevada is one of those states where it can change. And it happened to Bernie in 2016. It could happen again. What happens is you go to the caucus, the delegates are apportioned. You go to the convention, they elect the national delegates, and guess what? they're not Bernie supporters, and maybe they're not exactly bound to vote the way that we thought they were. And so the number of delegates that Biden has, or that Bernie has from Nevada, isn't set in stone right now. Until the convention, when those delegates are actually chosen, we know who they are. That's when it's locked in. So,
Yeah.
yeah. And there's so many tricks that the party leaders can play. They can repeal all the rules when you get to the state convention. They can run out the clock. So, we ran out of time to elect delegates, so we were going to hand pick these delegates, either the at large or the by congressional district, or however you're going to do it. And it's a farce. It can become an absolute farce. So don't be surprised. These are the kinds of dirty tricks that will be played against Bernie as we go forward.
Yeah, I could see that. Now, I did want to point out that with our daily distractions, you can see some of these other headlines here on the side. You have like one that says "Old woman, bumbling liar. Voters describe 2020 candidates in one word."
Right.
That's your typical, what I like to call your idiot on the street type reporting, as if anyone cares. But apparently people do.
Well,
you have another headline here. A woman almost got trampled when she tried to pet a moose in Colorado.
Now that's important. That's something you can use. Don't pet moose in Colorado. So.
Yeah, and then you got the sort of bizarre stuff, the bizarre political, I guess, I don't know. College recruiter is out of a job after he asked high schoolers to line up by skin color and hair texture.
Sure. Well, I mean, he's out of a job. The scandal would be if he still had a job. This is clickbait. It's an outrage, but clearly the people above him knew it was an outrage, and they did the right thing. They fired him. You shouldn't do that.
Those kind of headlines just they
make your blood pressure rise. Yeah.
I mean, I understand why they have it there. It like you said, is clickbait. People like to see the train crash. They can't get away from it apparently. But I don't think it elevates the discussion in any way.
No.
Mary Osmond reveals she won't leave her fortune to her children. Yeah, that's something I think we all care about.
I'm okay with them reporting the death of James Lipton.
I agree with you there. He did have a good show, and actually, I
can't believe how old he was. 93.
Yeah, he was 93. Yeah. I heard about that news earlier today, and that's he actually. I actually enjoyed his show quite a bit.
Yeah, I would have guessed 20 years younger.
Adam Levine responds to fan backlash over performance. Yeah, that's hard news, right? That's hard news.
Sure. At least it's below the fold. Below the fold. Some people want the entertainment gossip, and they have a place to get it. So.
And I want to clarify that as we go forward, I plan to be a little bit better prepared with these specific headlines that are just sort of outrageous and silly.
That's fine. This is a good cross section. This is what we're fed, and the top of the news. These are the stories that go viral. These are the stories that go around, and these are distractions. It's unfortunate, but
do you see this Oprah one? Oprah falls on stage while talking about balance.
The irony,
right? Yeah. The irony. Wow. I mean, I don't. Yeah. This is CNN. Okay, this is supposed to be the hard news network.
The hardest of hard
news.
This is
the kind of, and this is the CNN.com page. This is the first stuff you see.
Right.
It's amazing to me. It really is. I mean, it's just amazing to me, the kind of stuff they have on here. Lady Gaga announces new album. Public Enemy fires Flavor Flav after dispute over Bernie Sanders rally.
I don't understand. How can they fire him? I don't. Maybe this is real news, because that's like the Rolling Stones firing Keith Richards. It doesn't make any sense. Oh well.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't make any sense at all.